Tonight on Reporting Scotland, divisions at Holyrood over Scottish Government efforts to stay in the European single market after Brexit.
I'm not eating this. It's stone cold.
The Police Federation claims officers have no discretion when they intervene in cases of domestic abuse. The wealth gap in our country. We look at how almost half Scotland's assets are held by the richest 10%. Helping children deal with the death of a parent or sibling. A charity is brought in to train NHS staff.
I was just so shocked because I was so young, and it was horrible to think that my dad's, of everybody, why was it my dad that went away?
And later in the programme. Andy Murray's first victory as world #1, but can he maintain his form and stay top in London? Good evening. There are divisions tonight at Holyrood over how to maintain Scotland's links with the European Union. Opposition parties say they can't back a Scottish Government effort to sustain full membership of the single market when they don't have any details as to how that would happen. The row follows BBC Scotland's disclosure of a possible plan to continue the free movement of people after Brexit. Our political editor, Brian Taylor, reports.
Merci. Merci à qui?
For nearly a decade, Karine Lasserai has been offering a taste of France to Edinburgh palates. On the free movement of people across Europe, she says, vive la différence.
It's a way of sharing a culture, a way of eating, a way of living, a way of speaking, and it's such a shame because there's so much to offer.
Right now, people from the European Union can work here without hindrance, and likewise Scots can get jobs across the EU. That's the single market.
Thank you, Presiding Officer.
And at Holyrood this afternoon, ministers said they were determined to preserve it, despite Brexit.
Leaving the single market could increase the cost of exporting. It could reduce the country's attractiveness to overseas investors. It could lose us jobs. 80,000 is the figure mentioned by the Fraser of Allender Institute.
But how? The single market covers all 28 EU countries, presently including the UK. That allows for free movement of goods, services, capital and people. If we leave the EU, we leave that market. The issue is how to replicate membership. What about the European Economic Area? That's the EU plus Liechtenstein, Norway and Iceland. The same four freedoms apply. The idea is Scotland joins that, allowing EEA citizens access to Scotland, even if there are curbs elsewhere in the UK. Supporters say that could work because Holyrood's tax powers mean people working here in Scotland already have a distinctive tax code, marking them out clearly. But there are significant obstacles. Firstly, EEA members are all autonomous states, not devolved territories. So even if there was European interest, Scotland would need prior agreement from the UK government, and UK ministers will need some persuading to get round concerns that this could involve backdoor access to the wider UK through Scotland. Scottish Conservatives say those fears could end in checks at the border with England.
Our trading links with the rest of the United Kingdom are 4 times more important than our links with the EU. And we shouldn't be trying to get a deal with the EU that jeopardises our trading links with the UK by creating a hard border between Scotland and England.
That's disputed by the SNP. In votes tonight, Holyrood backed Scotland's full place in the single market, but with only the Greens supporting the SNP in that particular stand. Precious little entente, and none of it cordial. Brian Taylor, Reporting Scotland.
Well, our correspondent David Porter is at Westminster. David, so how will this vote be seen by the UK government?
I think the overwhelming view will be that Holyrood has the right to make its views known on such a crucial political issue at the moment. But quite frankly, I don't think it is going to influence the UK government, and it certainly won't bind the UK government's hands. But what it does show is just how divisive and complex Brexit is going to be, and that was put into very sharp focus today as Downing Street has spent the day playing down a leaked memo which questioned the fitness of Whitehall to enter the Brexit negotiations. Now, it wasn't written by a government minister, it wasn't even written by a civil servant, it was written by an outside consultant. But that hasn't stopped the opposition parties here at Westminster piling in. Labour said that the UK government's Brexit strategy was in chaos and confusion. The SNP, for their part, said that Brexit and negotiations and what the government was planning down here at Westminster was a complete and utter shambles. It does just go to show how complex and how fraught these negotiations will be. There will be more of this over the days, weeks, months, and perhaps even years to come. Jackie.
Thank you very much, David Porter at Westminster for us. Couples can't row in their own house for fear that if police are called, one will leave in handcuffs. Well, that was the claim of the leader of the Police Rank and File Union, who told a Holyrood committee officers don't have any discretion when dealing with domestic abuse. But his remarks have been condemned by charities and domestic violence campaigners. Our Home Affairs correspondent, Rival Alderson, reports.
6 courts like this one in Glasgow hear solely domestic abuse cases. There's an official zero-tolerance approach, but the main police union told Holyrood's Justice Committee it's gone too far.
We have got to a stage now in Scotland where couples, for example, can't have a row in their house, or if they do and the police are formed, there is a very strong likelihood that one of them is leaving in handcuffs. Are we really saying that we're best served by having situations where families and relationships have the interference of the criminal justice system just because someone happened to phone the police on overhearing raised voices?
These claims made in a hearing about the pressures faced by prosecutors have alarmed domestic abuse campaigners who say they send the wrong message to victims.
In my view, those sentiments will raise the risk to victims. It's very clear that in not every situation of domestic abuse that someone will be arrested. In fact, to infer that couples fighting is equal to domestic abuse is actually dangerous. Domestic abuse is not about couples fighting. And to say otherwise is, I'm really quite shocked at the statements made this morning.
Police Scotland said tackling domestic abuse remains a priority. The force refuted claims that officers have no discretion in dealing with incidents. Our officers attend these incidents, said Chief Superintendent Barry McEwen, take the relevant evidence and apply professional judgment, and will only arrest or detain when there's a sufficiency of evidence under Scots law. And prosecutors told the Justice Committee their interest is ensuring justice and they won't bring cases to court if there's insufficient evidence.
There can sometimes even be disagreements between the Crown and the police as to the sufficiency. We're all working towards the same goal of ensuring that the interests of justice are served, however, and a suggestion that prosecutors in Scotland are initiating proceedings in cases where there's an insufficiency of evidence certainly is not matched by my experience or that of any of our members.
Campaigners insist that zero tolerance to domestic abuse doesn't mean pursuing cases where there isn't enough evidence. Rival Alderson reporting, Scotland.
All this week we're looking at inequalities in Scottish society. Tonight it's wealth. It could be your savings and investments, pension, your home, or for some people almost nothing at all. Well, Scotland is home to an estimated 43,000 millionaires, and at the same time, almost half the country have less than £1,000 in savings. Well, here's our business and economy editor, Douglas Fraser, to tell us more. Douglas.
Thanks very much, Jackie. Yeah, well, while your income flows, your wealth is what's here to stay, or for a rainy day. The average Scottish household has wealth of around £187,000. Now, in England, where houses are more valuable, it's 40,000 more. The gap between the haves and the have-nots is bigger than for income. If you lined up everyone in Scotland, a 10% share, almost all of that would be privately held assets. The least wealthy half of the population share, less than a tenth of the country's wealth. Now, much of that divide is because so much is held in pension investments by those with good pension schemes. Financial paper investments are overwhelmingly concentrated in only a few hands. But for many, their big asset is their home, or for some, maybe 2 or 3 homes. Somewhere you'll find that gulf is widest is in the rural Highlands and Islands.
My name's Nicola McPhail. I'm from West Property. We are based in Oban and we manage and sell property across the Isle of Mull, Argyll and Lochaber. We do anything from small 1-bedroom flats all the way up to 2, 3, 4, 5-bedroom houses. I would say the most sought after property is still certainly the kind of small, easily managed second home that comes in the price point that locals can also afford and compete for. People looking to stay in the area look at different housing options. We've also got second home buyers coming, obviously moving into the area, who are either buying a property prospectively before moving here and living here permanently, or like say buying a rental investment here on the island.
I'm Cameron. I moved to Mull 6 years ago. Went there just for a summer job, but eventually found a partner, settled down and want to find a home there, but I'm finding it a little bit hard to get myself a home. The house prices themselves are far too high for young people living there, and the wages conversely are the other way. They're too low and we don't get paid enough to afford a mortgage. The answer for a lot of folk is simply build more houses. More availability will drive the price down. It's quite difficult because part of the charm of living somewhere like Mull is that it's remote, it's rural. There's not big cities, there's not big towns. There does need to be this balance. So
young people looking at the future are maybe deciding to resign themselves to live in private rented in the long term and never actually be a homeowner. They can have the couple of holidays a year and enjoy a good social life and get on with life without the worry of having to scrimp and save for that deposit.
33% of homes on Mull are second homes or holiday homes, so that drives the price right through the roof. Not saying you can't have a second home or a holiday home, but there needs to be a balance here of cheaper homes for people to be able to afford their own home. Everybody's finding it hard, and if we don't do something, it's simply going to get worse.
So if this gap matters and there's a case for closing it, what could be done? Well, we could help people build up wealth, or we could encourage companies to build more homes. But what about taxation? That's the solution highlighted by one economist who's studied Scotland's inequality in depth.
Reforming the council tax and changing it to a tax that better reflects the value of properties, and in so doing recognises that there are some properties at the very top end of our property spectrum that don't really pay all that big a share of their value each year.
Well, that's one idea for bridging the wealth gap, Douglas, but it's not the only one.
Yeah, taking away from those who have is problematic. It's difficult. They might not like it very much. So there are these other options to build more homes. Well, that should take the price down and spread assets more widely. Or we could give people a hand up with incentives to save, perhaps matching funds, perhaps a grant to children when they're born. Having at least something is a start to build on. And it's only if you start with something that you're able to borrow money, maybe to set up in business or to buy your own home. Wealth usually generates more wealth.
So how difficult is it to break this cycle of inequality?
Well, there's clearly a link between income and wealth. If you've got high income, you've got some spare to put aside and to invest. It's important to note they're not the same, though. It's possible to have lots of wealth but not much income. For instance, someone on a small pension but in a very big house, or lots of income but not much wealth, such as a young football star. But building up wealth, of course, is going to take time. Talk of inheritance tax is used as well. That can only happen once in a generation, the transfer of wealth getting blocked to some extent by the state.
What have you got for us tomorrow?
Well, tomorrow we're talking about education. That's probably the way to break the cycle of disadvantage, the main way of doing so. Lots of good things happening there in Scotland, but still lots of people getting left behind. Lots more on that tomorrow, lots more about this week-long series on BBC Scotland News Online. You can contribute your views online and by social media.
Thank you very much, Douglas. You're watching BBC Reporting Scotland. It's 18 minutes to 7. A reminder of tonight's top story. Divisions at Holyrood over Scottish Government efforts to stay in the European single market after Brexit. Still to come, the largest and brightest full moon for nearly 70 years. But only for some of us, we go in search of last night's elusive supermoon. Figures suggest that in Scottish schools, one child in every class is dealing with the bereavement of a parent or sibling. Providing the right support as they go through this process is vital. An Edinburgh-based charity has now been asked by NHS Scotland to help as they train staff in how to talk to children dealing with the death of someone close. Lisa Summers reports.
Where was that taken?
Chris McKellar shares memories of his dad with his mum Tracy, but for many years he bottled things up.
That's my favourite photograph of you and your daddy.
Just 7 when his father was killed in an accident at work.
The day it happened, my mum sat me and my 3 brothers down and it explained that something had happened and that, I think her exact words were, Daddy's up with the angels now, which kind of like it hit me with being so young. But of course, being so young, not having a full understanding of vocabulary and everything, didn't quite understand exactly.
Chris was supported by Richmond's Hope, a charity set up at this church in Edinburgh.
The minister here in Craigmillar realised that there was a lack of support after carrying out 15 funerals that left 36 children without a parent or a sibling. Within 6 months of setting up the charity, they were getting referrals from across the city, and now they've opened up a similar service in Glasgow.
And that was me when I was a little baby.
Georgie MacArthur's father died suddenly when she was 14. As a teenager, she struggled to cope.
No one had ever passed away in my family before, so this was the first person to pass away, and I was just like so shocked because I was so young, and it was horrible to think that like my dad's, of everybody, why was it my dad that went away?
It would have helped if someone we trusted had said what was going on in simple words.
NHS Scotland asked the charity for help to train staff. They want to engage with children in the right way at the most difficult of times.
Children can be harmed and confused by mixed messages. These communications are remembered for decades, and it is hugely important to get that moment right.
Honest. The Child Bereavement Network estimates that by 16, 5% of children will lose a parent. Getting the right support is crucial. The effects last a lifetime. Lisa Summers, reporting Scotland, Edinburgh.
We'll now look at other stories from across the country. More than £17 billion is expected to be spent over the next 8 years on removing redundant oil and gas installations from the North Sea. The industry forecasts around 100 fields will be closed, but says it's not rushing into decommissioning. It also expects new fields to be developed.
Decommissioning, when it finally comes, is a very measured and a very deliberate decision. And that's why you're not seeing companies rush to the door in the current environment, because costs have and are coming down to operate the North Sea. And companies are trying to manage the facilities so they're there for the long term.
Dumfries and Galloway Council has agreed to extend temporary stop and search powers for animal welfare officers at the Cairnryan ferryport. The extra powers for Scottish SPCA investigators were granted in January, for a year after a BBC Scotland documentary found evidence of illegal puppy trafficking from Northern Ireland. Since then, a further 140 pups have been detected and 7 people detained. The scheme has been extended for another year. The company creating a huge tidal power scheme in the Pentland Firth has announced that electricity has been produced from the first turbine to be installed on the seabed. Atlantis Resources is siting 4 turbines off the island of Stroma as part of the demonstrative phase of its scheme. If it's successful, around 260 further turbines will be added to the array, which hopes to provide enough power for up to 175,000 homes. One of the best-known dinosaurs is coming to Scotland. Dippy, the Natural History Museum's famous Diplodocus, will go on display at Kelvingrove Art Gallery in 2 years' time. It's never been seen before outside London. Dippy is a 63-foot plaster of Paris model and has been on display since 1905.
The idea is to inspire future generations of scientists about the natural world. So we're hoping that when children come and see Dippy the dinosaur, they'll also get inspired to look at other aspects of natural history, and we have a whole programme of events taking place while Dippy's here to try and inspire them to do just that.
Andy Murray could all but guarantee his place in the last 4 of the World Tour finals tomorrow. To do that, though, he must beat Japan's Kai Nishikori and hope the result of the other match goes his way. Murray got off to a winning start against Marin Cilic last night, as Kerry Knudsen reports.
The world #1 from Great Britain, Andy Murray!
Another Murray milestone, his first match as Britain's first ever world #1 in singles. His reception rather rapturous.
It was amazing walking out, obviously, to that reception, and great atmosphere. I don't know if it was completely sold out, but it felt that way. You know, it was pretty full, and yeah, support was unbelievable tonight, and definitely helped me get through the match.
In truth, there weren't too many difficult moments for Murray last night. A scrappy first set was secured 6-3. The longer the match went on, the more Murray settled in. The best player in the world just now, giving Marin Cilic ample evidence why.
Oh, brilliant from Murray.
Murray reeled off 5 games in a row to secure his 20th victory in a row and set up a mouth-watering match against Japan's Kei Nishikori tomorrow.
Game, set, match, Murray. He's played very well last few months. Obviously had a tough loss to him at the US Open, and then had a really good match with him as well at Davis Cup. So we played twice, I think, only this year, and 2 5-setters, 10 sets. You know, it's pretty even, so it'll be a tough match.
A very good start then for Andy Murray here at the World Tour Finals, and that's very much been the case for big brother Jamie too. Depending on results this evening, he and Brazilian partner Bruno Soares may already have done enough to make Saturday's semi-finals after a fine straight sets win over the American Bryan brothers. Tomorrow at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the focus switches back to Andy. If he can beat Kei Nishikori here, we could have a scenario tomorrow evening where both Murray brothers are already through to the last 4. Kerry Nidsan reporting Scotland at the World Tour Finals in London.
Well, meanwhile, Scotland rugby captain Greg Laidlaw says the team must grow up if they're to start winning tight matches against the top nations. The team were on course for a famous win over Australia on Saturday at Murrayfield before the Wallabies scored that late converted try, sealing a 1-point win. Jane Lewis can tell us more.
Reflecting on what might have been. 3 days on, and the Scotland captain admits defeat to Australia still pains him.
Through it goes from Foley. 4 minutes to go, and Australia leads at Murrayfield.
So close to a wonderful win. Instead, it was heartbreak, from which Scotland must learn.
We just need to keep discipline in our shape in terms of what we're trying to do, and have confidence in each other to hold the ball. And we need to grow up right throughout the team, no matter if it's, you know, the young boys coming in or the most experienced players, and everybody must understand what's working for us to make sure we get over the line in these tight games.
Amid defeat, there were some positives for Scotland.
And out to Hugh Jones, and Jones is it again! Hugh Jones scores his second try!
New faces impressed, and a feeling that the squad is showing some strength in depth.
It's pleasing, and that's what you need as a squad, as a healthy squad. It's competition for places. Nobody's safe within the squad, and nobody feels really that safe in terms of, you know, your performance needs to be good, or there's players around that can step up and do a good job.
So competition for places is hotting up. No chance to relax then, with Argentina to come in their second autumn test this Saturday. Jane Lewis, reporting Scotland.
Well, here's something that doesn't play ball. That thing last night saw the largest and brightest full moon for nearly 70 years. But a cloudy night meant the so-called supermoon was only visible in some parts of the country. But as our John McManus reports, it was worth seeking out.
Our closest cosmic companion paid a visit last night.
With just one hand.
If you were lucky enough to see it, this was the view. Its closest approach to Earth coincided with a full moon, though it won't happen again until 2034. It sparked the imagination ever since man first looked up at the night sky. But despite that familiarity, we're still fascinated by the moon. And as our closest neighbour, it's still the only other place in the solar system we've ever set foot on. But if you missed it, there's another chance tonight.
It's a day past full, so it won't be a perfect circular full moon. And also it's a day past its closest approach, so it will be a bit further away from us. But having said that, again, your brain will compensate for those things. It's still a spectacular sight to see.
The heavenly spectacle has sparked interest.
The moon was almost as close as it can ever be to the Earth when the full moon occurred. It was just 2 hours away from the closest distance it can ever get to. So this is unusual.
With luck, the clouds may part tonight. Best viewing in the south and the east. John McManus reporting Scotland.
John McManus is stealing your thunder. I was about to ask you that. Where are we going to see it tonight, Cosser?
Well, funny enough, the south and east of the country. There you go. That's a forecast for you. Yes, the best chances for tonight will be the south and east. Now, many of us across the country did have a fine end to the day, and it's largely dry out there too. And we've had some lovely spells of sunshine too across the country. And if you are hoping to catch that supermoon once again tonight, like one of our weather watchers did last night, and this is a close-up, by the way, it wasn't really this big. For tonight, the cloud will thicken as we head through the night. So the best chance is really early on this evening and for the first part of the night, because we'll start to see some rain arriving from the west by the end of the night. So these telescopes represent where the best chances are. Really the Lothians, the borders for most of the night, but then we'll start to see cloud thickening and outbreaks of rain pushing in from the west. And some of this rain could be quite heavy for a time over higher ground. And it's going to turn colder too. So in the south, temperatures 7 or 8 degrees, but 3 or 4 Celsius by the end of the night for the north. And that really it paces how it's going to be for tomorrow. When that cold front does sweep through tomorrow, colder air. So those showers will become increasingly wintry, especially for the highlands, for the higher road routes, the A9. There may be some sleet and some snow around as well. And with those winds, some difficult driving conditions. So let's take a closer look then at tomorrow afternoon. A mixture of some sunshine, some showers, showery conditions for the Northern Isles, some strong winds still with us for the far north, the northwestern coastal areas, with some big waves too. Further inland, some sunshine, some showers, and these showers still wintry up over the hills further towards the south. Temperatures much cooler. It's going to be looking at around 8 or 9 degrees compared to the 17 degrees we had in Aboyne yesterday. And we'll continue to see that polar maritime air being drawn in by the rest of the week too, turning much colder for all of us across the UK. And that's the theme pretty much for Thursday, for Friday, as those showers will become increasingly wintry. So here's the scene for Thursday. You see those showers, heavy at times with the risk of some hail, some thunder. The higher road routes for the A9, as I mentioned, there could be some settling snow. There will be some brighter spells in between the showers, but temperatures struggling 4 or 5 degrees.
Thank you, Cosser. Now a reminder of tonight's main headline. There are divisions at Holyrood tonight over how to maintain Scotland's links with the European Union. Opposition parties say they cannot back the Scottish Government over efforts to sustain full membership of the single market, but they don't have any details as to how that would happen. And that's Reporting Scotland. Our next main bulletin is at 10:25. Until then, from all the team, good evening.